Welcome, everybody. I'd like to introduce Dr. Howard Schubiner. Welcome to the show. This is huge for me. I think this is you're the first celebrity that I've had on my show, and I'm excited to have you. Welcome.
Um, I'm only a celebrity in my own mind, but thank you very much.
Nice. Okay, well, you're the leading expert in the mind-body space. Now, I wanted to see, how did you get into this field? How did this fall in your lap?
It literally fell into my lap.
Yeah.
I mean, Kierkegaard said you can only live your life forward, but you can only understand it backward.
Mm,
And it's completely true for me because I was just living my life, doing what I did. I was just, it's a long story I'm not going to bore you with all the
yeah.
different parts of my life that kind of led to this, that had to do
Hmm.
with, challenging authority, had to do with questioning authority, had to do with getting tickets and becoming a physician and learning how to do research and learning how to take care of patients and learning how to
Yeah.
talk to patients and learning mindfulness and learning meditation and becoming a
Yeah.
teacher. And all these things culminated when I read a book by Dr. Sarno in 2000 and early 2003. And
Yeah.
I just started doing this work because his work, his ideas spoke to me that the mind is connected to the body. It's not that revolutionary. The fact
Yeah.
that the brain can cause real symptoms, real and severe pain and
Hmm.
anxiety and depression and fatigue and migraine and irritable bowel and all these things that modern medicine does a very poor job at. And
Yep.
then here was an answer that made perfect sense. And then I thought, well, let me try it.
Right.
Let me see if this works for me and I just started talking to people, Helmut. I
Right.
just started talking to people and listening to them and listening to their stories. And I would spend
Hmm.
an hour and a half or 2 hours with people to hear their life story and their pain
Right.
story and their symptom story. And just putting it all together was like being a little detective.
So you saw patterns then eventually.
Unbelievable. It was mind blowing. And it
And
was
you can start
so
predicting the
simple.
patterns. I'm guessing you can start asking the right questions. Go, did this happen? Actually, it did.
Yeah,
Huh. Did you
right.
see a lot of that?
Exactly. Right. Because when you see somebody who has had a history of being abandoned in their childhood, for
Hmm.
example, and
Right.
then when they're 25 or 35 or 45, they start getting some pain or some anxiety or some fatigue or
Yeah.
something or a bunch of those things. And you say, gee, what was going on in your life when those
Mm.
symptoms started? Was there any abandonment? I
Right.
mean, it sounds so silly. It's like, what is this, Freud or something? But
Right.
it's just common sense that the brain, and when you understand how the brain works, it's
Hmm.
really critical to understand that our brains literally create what we experience. And our brains
Yeah.
have memories and they remember the hurts and they remember the problems and they remember the times that you were endangered.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't abandonment. Maybe it was being overly controlled and micromanaged. Maybe it was being screamed at. Maybe it was being threatened.
Right.
A variety of hurts that occur, and the brain remembers those.
Right.
And then when it feels you're in danger, it creates a warning signal. The brain's just doing its
Hmm.
job. So if you break an ankle, your brain's job is to turn on pain.
Hmm.
Ankle injuries don't cause pain. Only the brain can cause pain. And we know that because you can have a severe injury and have no pain.
Yeah.
And if that's
And then
the
vice
case,
versa.
and exactly, and we know that people can have severe pain and other symptoms in the absence of any injury. So now we know, hey, the brain's controlling this. This is called predictive processing, and it's hard neuroscience. It's not woo-woo medicine. It's hard
Right.
neuroscience. And so if the brain is creating what we experience, why would it create what it does? Well, it creates
Yeah.
what it does to protect us, to warn us, to alert us. And if you get in a situation that's emotionally threatening, your brain can't speak English to you and can't tap you on the shoulder and say, Helmut, hey,
Right.
man,
Yeah.
there's something going on in your life you need to take care of, you need to address. It
Right.
just gives you this pain, and you think, God, my body must be damaged. I must have some horrible disease.
Hmm.
But
That's easy to get into.
that's our job, right? That's our job as physicians and as people who can think and understand how the brain works and how the body works. And that's why modern medicine does a crummy job sometimes,
Mhm.
oftentimes, at treating chronic headache, chronic back pain, fibromyalgia, irritable bowel syndrome, why it does a
Yep.
crummy job of treating chronic pelvic pain and anxiety and depression and OCD and PTSD because and chronic fatigue, it doesn't understand how the brain works and doesn't understand that the brain can produce these real,
Yeah.
not they're not in your head, they're not imaginary, they're not fake, it's not because you're crazy, you're just
And
human.
you're not injured. That's another thing I see in this mind body space. There's
Yeah.
some people that like to say there's a brain injury, it's misfiring, it's confused, it's out of
Yeah.
order, right?
No, I don't think so at all, man.
Right.
It is doing its job.
Right.
It is trying to protect us. Pain is a protector.
Right.
These are warning signals. And it's just, it's an error in the sense that it's creating pain in the back or in the toe or in the stomach. It's an
Hmm.
error that there's a damage in that area of the body. I mean, there can be, and that's our job to rule out any structural problems, but
Right.
that's relatively easy to do. But once you've done that, then it's an error the brain is creating. It's not
Hmm.
misfiring though, it's just assuming that there's some danger there, or it's assuming that there's some danger in your life that you can't handle.
Right.
And so, in treating people for this, we correct the error the brain is making. It's protecting you, but it's protecting you in a way that you don't need protection because either one,
Mhm.
you can tell the brain, I'm not damaged and I'm not broken. Number two, I can
Yeah.
handle this. I need to deal with, and I will deal with the underlying feelings, the underlying emotions, the underlying stressful situation.
It's
Sometimes
almost
people
like
need
we're,
to change their
yeah.
job. There's
Oh
like,
yeah, that's what I mean.
they need to change their job, and that's the
Well,
treatment.
if it fills up your bucket,
Yeah,
right? Life shit fills up your bucket. Well, you
yeah,
got to figure out, well, I got to quit my job, bring this back down. Yeah, that makes
exactly.
sense.
Which is crazy. It's like, what doctor's going to tell you that? It's like, got to operate on your back or something.
It's, you know what? It's almost like learn the language of the brain. It's there to serve you, and I think it's been the communication's been broken down where we don't understand. Once you understand, it works perfectly.
Yeah,
it's I think that's the main thing. Is like we don't understand what this means, so then we go down these rabbit holes. And it's like we got to start teaching people what these signals actually mean, and it's there to serve you, it's there to help you to protect you from the danger.
exactly. Danger or threat.
Yeah.
And when people, for the first barrier to this work, as I
Mm.
mentioned, is people thinking that you're saying it's all in my head, that it's not real.
Yeah. Right.
And the people who have these problems are suffering. They're
Hmm.
suffering greatly. And if we don't treat them with compassion and caring and understanding, we're
Yep.
lost from the beginning. So that's the first thing. And the fact that they're not only suffering from the physical ailments they have that are causing tremendous um, worry and pain and inability to live their lives and enjoy their lives, they're also suffering from the underlying emotional, psychological, instruction, social issues in their life that have caused it in the first place, related to
Yep.
their family, their spouses, their kids, their job, their neighbors, the society at large, etc. So they're doubly suffering, triply
Yep.
suffering, really suffering. And first have to understand that. And we have to explain to them that we're not invalidating their their what they have. What they have is real.
Well, that's not my next
So
question. Like,
that's a
where do you
key
cut it
starting
off?
point.
Where do you cut where's the limit? You go, no, that's sorry, that doesn't qualify for TMS. So you don't get the prize. Sorry, get out of here. Like, where does it stop?
You mean when someone has a structural problem, do we say we can't help you? Is that kind of what you're
Yeah,
saying?
like where do you say like because I know there's TMS tests that people take so they know if they qualify for the mind body way of healing. And then some people say, well, we're not sure, you might not qualify, you might have to, go see your doctor and do the traditional ways of whatever it
Right,
is.
right.
Where do you draw the line? Because I know different people have different lines that they draw. I know TMS is mostly pain. I think it's starting to open up to, like you mentioned, chronic fatigue and anxiety. Um,
Right.
Also now autoimmune, ulcerative colitis, right?
Right. So the way I think of it is there's a spectrum of disorders.
Hmm.
And on the spectrum, certain disorders, everyone needs to be evaluated individually and put
Yep.
on the spectrum. You might have 10 different symptoms. 9 of them might be purely mind body or neuroplastic or TMS symptoms, but one might be
Yeah.
maybe that hip is really severely arthritic and that may need some medical attention, right?
Hmm.
So we have to sort that out. But on the spectrum, certain illnesses that I mentioned before tend to be primarily or 100% basically neuroplastic or mind body. Certain ones are really, when you have a fractured bone, it's like, well, you need medical treatment. When you
Right.
have an abscess, when you have, and then when you have cancer, well, we don't treat cancer from a mind body approach. Some people
Hmm.
do.
Right.
What about autoimmune disorders? Those are kind of in the middle, kind of in the middle, whereas we know that they're structural problems, but we
Yep.
also know they're due to the immune system.
Hmm.
And the immune system is misfiring. It's causing antibodies against their own tissues.
Hmm.
And it turns out there's a field of psychoneuroimmunology that shows, again, hard science, that the brain can affect the immune system.
Yep.
So, what in those autoimmune disorders, why not treat them medically because we have good medications for them, but also why not treat them from the mind body approach as well? There's nothing stopping you, there's no risk, there's no harm
Right.
in that,
Right.
right?
That
I
makes
mean,
sense to me, right? Like I think some of these things that maybe got structurally damaged over time, let's say arthritis and whatever you have, it might have got there because of the mind body as a start. Maybe you had stress throughout your life and it started to build up. Something's got to give. Symptoms manifest. You haven't regulated. You haven't done the work, and then that's the result. I think that could also be the
yeah.
case.
I mean, a lot of people have, most people have arthritis on x-rays or MRIs of their joints as they age.
Hmm.
And but most people who have that amount of arthritis, mild to moderate arthritis in their joints, don't have pain. Yet some people do.
Right.
So, it may not be the arthritis because everyone has arthritis to some degree. I do. I've got severe arthritis in my neck, but I don't have any neck pain.
Right.
And it's not necessary. And it's just that having arthritis is like having gray hair. It's part of normal life. It doesn't hurt. You've got
Right.
gray hair. I've got gray hair, but it doesn't hurt. I mean, when you look in the mirror, it hurts a bit. When you get a
Yeah.
haircut, it hurts. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
whose gray hair is that? Geez.
Yeah. It's like almost like a normal abnormality, but it's not an abnormality.
Exactly. Exactly. And
Interesting.
so, right. And so we have these tests and we look very carefully at folks who have pain, fatigue, anxiety, depression, insomnia, bowel disorders, et cetera. We look carefully at them to look for
Hmm.
the characteristics of the symptoms.
Yep. That's
And
true. Yeah.
frequently, the characteristics of the symptoms, they get worse when they're under stress. That's interesting.
Right.
They get worse with the weather. Well, weather doesn't actually cause pain. It's a trigger in the brain. These are
Right.
learned responses, conditioned responses. Maybe it gets worse with touch. Maybe it gets worse with meeting certain people. Maybe it gets worse when you bend over, but I mean, sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. Maybe it's inconsistent.
Right.
So if you have the symptoms are coming and going, shifting, moving around in the body, those give us information that the
Right.
neural circuits are doing that as opposed to some structural problem in the body, which would be much more consistent.
What would you say drives the symptoms?
So there's the symptoms of neuroplastic or mind body conditions are usually started by an emotional situation that's going on. That's usually
Hmm.
the genesis of them. But they can also be started by having a physical injury. So
Right.
let's say you pull out your back, weightlifting, or you twist your knee, or you have a fracture, or you have surgery and you have pain from the surgery. Those are
Mhm.
physical injuries, and those injuries will heal. But sometimes after the physical injury heals, the pain will continue.
Mm,
Why would the pain continue when the injury heals? Because the brain is in charge of turning on or turning off pain.
hmm.
And the brain may continue to have pain become persistent after an injury is healed, number one, because of fear of the injury or
Right.
fear of the pain or worry about the situation. It can also make pain persistent because of underlying emotional situations, stress going on in our lives, feelings that we're unable to express, such as anger, sadness, guilt. And so those things are all varieties of ways that can trigger the so-called danger signal in the brain or threat detector that can make the symptoms happen. So those are the things which cause pain to be exacerbated.
Makes sense.
There's one
What do
more
you?
thing. There's one more
Yeah.
thing. What happens then if you have these symptoms? You go to doctors.
Oh, the labels. Fun.
And you go to doctors and then you get labeled.
Mm,
You get given a label. Oh, you have fibromyalgia, you have migraine headache. What's migraine headache? Oh, it's genetic. Oh, well, I can't do anything about it. Those are my genes. You've got fibromyalgia. What is it? Oh, it's inflammation in the body. I can't do anything about that. What's what's my back pain due to? Well, it's due to degenerative disc or bulging disc. Well, I can't do anything about that. But they don't tell you that those are findings seen in normal people. You've got chronic
yeah.
fatigue. What's chronic fatigue caused by? Oh, it's caused by the immune system and your energy stores aren't working in your body. Well, I can't do anything about that.
Hmm.
So you're given all these labels, and this causes a nocebo effect. The nocebo effect is believing that things will get worse, and then they get worse. So there's a cycle where you have the symptom, the pain, the fatigue, the anxiety, and then you have the fear of it, the worry of it, the focus on it,
Hmm.
the frustration with it. All these things make the danger alarm mechanism get worse. So
Yep.
that's a vicious cycle. So this nocebo effect makes people worse oftentimes because it's telling them it's out of their control. There's nothing they can do. It takes away hope. It tells them they're going to be in this situation forever. And then they may realize, well, traditional medicine isn't right. It's not
Yeah.
it's not helping me. Maybe I'll go to alternative medicine. Just because traditional medicine is wrong doesn't mean alternative medicine is right.
It's the same. It's almost worse sometimes.
Well, and again, all the people I'm talking about, the traditional doctors and the alternative doctors, are well-meaning. They're good people. They care.
Yeah,
They
of
want to
course. Yeah.
relieve suffering. In the alternative world, then you have different diagnoses. Oh, you've got Candida overgrowth or parasites, or
That's a big
you
one. The
need
candida,
vitamins, or herbs, or
your
you need
biome,
ozone treatments, or your biome
leaky
was
gut.
off.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there's all these other diagnoses that also can be very scary and out of your control. You need to totally change your diet. Now, food is causing your problems. Instead of
Hmm.
food being like joyful, food
Yeah.
is dangerous. So now that can compound and cause more nocebo effects. So people are so
Yeah.
caught because the symptoms can be so severe and so disabling and debilitating. And when they search for answers, they may help for a while, but then they don't because they haven't really seen the true nature of the disorder and are being
Yeah.
confused and scared by a variety of different ways of
And
thinking about
releasing these labels after, like when let's say you start going into this space after, 10 years of researching,
it.
you know, and it's still there in the
Yeah,
shelf. It's like, oh, how am I gonna like? It's constantly, it's like slapping me in the face. It's coming back from the years of research I did, and it's like really giving me the doubts.
exactly. And people, I'm seeing a woman right now who's been indoctrinated by she's been to like some of the best doctors in the country,
Right.
and they're
Yeah.
telling her that this pain that she has is due to these nerves, these abnormal nerve. It's a neuralgia. These nerves are damaged. And but why is the pain sometimes in this area and then that area, and it comes and goes and shifts around? Damaged nerves doesn't do that. But she says, how can the best doctors in the world not understand this? How can the best doctors in the
Yeah.
world be telling me this? And then she's been to a whole slew of alternative doctors. And
Right.
those things are caught in her brain. Well, are you sure it's not the heavy metals? Are you sure it's not it's
Yeah.
not the
The mold.
inflammation from sugar? Are you sure it's not mold?
Yeah.
And I'm saying, yeah, I'm sure, but you're right. Those things can stick in people's mind and cause a lot of doubt and fear.
Well, it's also, well, it's really nice to see a doctor that's open-minded to get into this mind-body space, and we need more of that. But when people are, these beliefs stick, you're most likely going to believe a guy in a white lab coat who's got years of, who's been in school for many years, done it for many years, compared to a guy like me sitting in my truck with my dog, looking like a half, a bum with my beard like out of whack, going, "No, trust me, it's neuroplastic. It's not right.
Yeah,
They're
right.
not gonna believe me.
You got the mountains and you
Well, I
got
got the
the
mountains.
sunlight in the background. You're like, man, this
They're not
guy's a
gonna believe
hippie.
this guy. They're gonna believe that guy over there. That's wrong."
Right. I know.
And I don't
You
blame them.
have to you have to go with what's true for you, I think
Right.
that's so many people, on one hand, we trust experts, we want them to help us. On the other hand,
Right.
well, we don't trust anybody. And it's hard to know who to trust.
Mm-hmm.
How there's this, yeah, I don't know. I'm old enough to remember the Rascals, in the
Yep.
US. The Rascals, they had a song, How Can I Be Sure?
Right.
And it was redone recently by a woman. It's a beautiful, beautiful version by a woman named Shelby Lynn. And she's like,
Mm-hmm.
how can I be sure? And at
Right.
the end, she says, I'm sure with you.
Right.
And to me, that song is like, you have to be sure with yourself. You have to be true to yourself, and you have to trust yourself and your instincts. And what the model that we have is extremely simple, but
Mm-hmm.
it's extremely powerful, and it's helped so many people. And we have reached, and we have randomized controlled, scientifically valid, published in high level journals, showing that this model works better than the old models for chronic pain. We also have a study in long COVID showing that this model works better. It's not hard to work better than the traditional models, because the traditional models say it's completely incurable. You can't do anything.
Right.
That's not true.
And people like our brain is constantly looking for evidence because it needs the reassurance to, okay, well, it's getting me to scan for danger. It's getting me to investigate for the intruder. So it's great when you do the research and you go, see, and then people can latch onto it and go, okay, I can do it.
Right.
That's what I needed.
What's interesting is that facts often don't change people's minds. It's an interesting
Yeah.
thing. Like, what does change people's minds? Because we're trying to make a revolution in how these disorders are treated medically. The
Yeah.
structural disorders in medicine, the cancers, the diabetes, the heart disease, um, the MS, medicine is doing better with those. There's a lot of new
Hmm.
technology that's working well. But for these disorders, these what they call functional disorders that we call mind, body, or neuroplastic disorders, medicine doesn't do so well. But how do we change people's hearts and minds about this? And the answer is basically one person at a time, because
Yeah.
you can read the research, but facts don't change people's mind. What changes people's mind is stories and seeing it in other people. And the vast majority of the people who work in this space, as you call it, are people who've had their own personal experiences with this.
That's what it is.
And that makes a believer out of you. I mean, you've experienced that, haven't you?
Yeah, of course. I had the 70 plus symptoms. It took me 3 years to recover. I was in a shit show. I had the OCD looping thoughts that were relentless, second by second surviving, right? I was
Yeah.
in the trenches. I had I had to stop looking in the toilet. I had the food sensitivities. I could eat two foods, no, two and a
Oh,
half, apples, rice and beef.
oh
Um,
God.
and I, and it was, I was in constant fear. I thought I was a special person, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know what was going on. All the years of research, and then I had my perfect storm because life threw me curveballs. Okay, I have the 70 symptoms, and then I got lucky. I don't know, maybe from above, my guides maybe like, here's a little bit of research. Go down this rabbit hole, and I went into the brain retraining world. It worked, for a bit. What I noticed, the more I healed physically, my body, the more my mental alarm started to skyrocket. I
Wow.
also had post-traumatic stress. I had phobias. I had the OCD looping thoughts like ramped up.
Right. Wow.
For
Yeah.
me, it seemed like, well, my brain was able to have all this alarm supply to get my attention to perceive danger, but I'm starting to heal, and I'm not out of the woods yet. My survival state's still at 1,000. My bucket's still full, so it had to find new ways to get my attention. So it's like, all right, ramp up the anxiety, ramp up the OCD looping thoughts, get them
Yeah.
to scan for danger because we're not out of the woods. So that happened to me, and what I was using at the time was not working, right? Because they're like doing a lot of, stop, stop, stop. What
Yeah.
you resist persists, which elevated my
Right.
baseline, which sent me
Right.
more alarms. And I didn't, I was like, how do I get out of this? I'm stuck. So I had to leave that. And the missing piece for me was learning to allow my thoughts, all the
Mhm.
catastrophizing thoughts, symptoms to be there, let them do their thing, right? Let the
Yeah.
energy flow through me and keep sticking to my routine. And I did visuals, right, to help bring my survival state down. And I also did elevating, right? And for a year and a half, all I did was eat those three safe foods. So that was
Wow.
boring. But eventually, my survival state came down, because I did all the
Right.
work every day, never missed a day.
Hmm.
Um, Eventually, I was able to train on foods,
Wow.
and I still had flares, but they weren't as severe. They didn't last for 3 weeks; they lasted for 3 days. And I would
Yeah.
purposely, eventually, I got to a point where I would drag out my symptoms. I'm like, no, 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 we're not going to the safe foods. We're going to drag this out. While I was going through my routine of life, because I was very
Yeah.
strict about my routine. I had my schedule, right?
Mhm.
So this way, I'm living life, I'm engaging in life while I brought the symptoms with me wherever I went.
Right. Right.
And that was my routine. And eventually they lessened. The more I allowed, let them do their thing, they started to lessen, lessen, lessen. And then I would start to go towards
Right.
any thoughts and symptoms. They were my targets. I would ask for
Mm.
more, let it do its thing, and keep doing that. Eventually,
Yeah.
things settled. And the cool thing is, I didn't have to micromanage my body, my biome, my
Mm.
gut, my kidneys, my liver, my neural pathways that I was, right. I didn't put too much focus on. Am I creating
Yeah.
neural pathways? Is this going to start to shift? Am I going to?
Yeah.
I let my body
Yeah.
follow suit. I started with my mind, reprogrammed it with the way I
Yeah.
responded, and everything else followed suit. I didn't have to worry about it. It was,
You
and
realize
finally,
you, yeah. You realize you
finally I
weren't
recovered.
really in danger,
Right.
and you started treating yourself that way. You started living your life as if you were normal, and the
Exactly.
symptoms would come and they would shift and they would move, but you just kept going. And it took
And
three
that, of course,
years. I
it's
mean,
hard.
that's amazing. It's really
It's the
hard to
hardest
do.
thing I ever did in my life. But you know what? It's a
Yeah.
learning. It's a teacher. It
Yeah.
teaches you things. And you know what? I use the same methods that I use to recover from physical symptoms for other things in life, business,
Hmm.
relationships, right? Spiritually, I had to
Yeah.
tap into my spiritual side because everything, my 3D reality was lying to me, right? Google,
Hmm.
doctors, my symptoms, right? So I was forced to go within to cross that invisible bridge, right? Because I was lost at sea, and that was, I needed that lighthouse. So that was my way to
This
keep going.
The symptoms are often kind of a message, as we said before, a guide or a messenger.
Yeah.
And sometimes people come through this and they realize they were there for a reason. They helped
Hmm.
me in some way. They helped point out some things that I needed to be differently or change in my life or do things or think about myself differently or treat myself differently. A lot of people find that
Yeah.
they're highly self-critical, self-blaming, they're hard on themselves, they beat themselves up, they
It's like an
care for
awakening.
everybody else before themselves, and they need to change
Yep.
that. They need to be more compassionate to themselves and awaken to
Yep.
who they really are and what their purpose and meaning is in life. Did you find
Right.
that as well?
Oh, afterwards, not during. Of course,
Hmm.
it's a nightmare. You're
Yeah.
like, why me?
Yeah.
Then after it
Right.
was, why not me? This is a gift. I'm forcing change. I was like, I
Yeah.
grew up, I was a lazy guy. I never did anything, right? If somebody gave me the answer to, all life, I would be like, yeah, tomorrow, right? But the fear made sure that I was stayed on the path. So my fear was my friend. It made sure that I
Yeah.
was, and then
Hmm.
afterwards, it was honestly a gift that I needed to happen for my life to have that stir up so I can make big changes and benefit with these tools for the rest of my life. Now it's a lifestyle. It's not so much, I'm
Hmm.
doing the work. It's not so much I'm doing a program or I have to. It's more like,
Yeah.
it's like people like to play hockey or yoga. For me, this is my thing that I do. I still do visuals. It's been 4 years and I
Hmm.
still enjoy them. I love them.
Yeah.
And right. So it's been a gift.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's funny, like you were saying, like just kind of bring it on. Just yesterday, 2 days ago, I was having this kind of twitching, tingling, weird sensation in the cheek on the right side of my face, and it
Yeah.
would just kind of throb and then go away, and throb and go
Yeah.
away, throb, and I just started watching it, and I just said, and I gently said to myself or to my brain, I just gently said, "Go on,"
Yeah.
and it went away. It just turned off like that.
Yeah.
'Cause I wasn't resisting it, I wasn't fighting
Right.
it, I wasn't angry with it. I
Yeah.
was just like, "Yeah, go ahead, it's okay."
You allowed it. You let it do its
Yeah,
thing.
and that deep it's hard for people to do, especially when this pain is severe, symptoms are severe, but it's can be really powerful, and it shows, like, if it goes away once,
Yeah.
it can go away again, and then you can
Right.
st get more relieved and stop worrying so much, "Oh my god, is it ever gonna go away?" Because that's the
Yeah.
problem, people have those thoughts, like you say, the
Yeah.
looping thoughts, and the more you fight them, the stronger they become.
They get bigger and bigger. They're supposed to, right? It's
Yeah,
supposed an
yeah,
alarm's supposed to be acknowledged. When what you resist persists, it's got to find a way to get your attention. So instead, acknowledge it, allow it, let it do its thing, right? And
yeah.
it's done its thing. It's like, okay, then the baseline can finally come down because before, if I'm having an inner battle, right? It's going to bring that
Mm,
baseline up. Survival, survival, more alarms. It's like, okay, there's a tiger inside us. So there's
yeah,
danger. He's fighting with himself. There's a lot of resistance. Well, no wonder.
right,
I'm trying to
right.
ignore, distract.
And then the other part of our treatment, in addition to the brain retraining, is the emotional awareness and expression therapy that we've developed.
Hmm.
And the idea here is to look underneath, because people frequently they've got their pain or their OCD and their anxiety. What's underneath it? Well,
Yeah.
underneath it is fear.
Right.
Okay, and what's underneath the fear? If you go a little deeper, say, oh, there's a deep sadness here.
Hmm.
Oh, now we've hit some gold. There's
Yeah.
sadness here. Where does that coming from? And
Mm-hmm.
what do you do with sadness? Sadness leads to compassion. If you're sad for somebody, it's because you care about them. And if you're sad for yourself, it's because you care about yourself. So you need to do self compassion work. And then what's underneath the sadness? Oh, if you really care about yourself, you look deeper and say, well, maybe I was mistreated. Or maybe
Yeah.
things didn't go well. Maybe there's resentment, annoyance. Maybe there's anger. Maybe there's rage or fury, and people
So
push
you start
those
opening
down.
doors.
And you
You,
open the
yeah.
door to the emotions. And
Yeah.
if you can let the anger out in a safe and healthy way, which we teach people how to do, and let the anger up and out and explode in your mind and then let it go, then you can release some of this underlying things that are driving that danger signal sometimes,
Hmm.
and then you can get to um, more compassion and forgiveness.
Yeah.
So it's been 2 years now. I'd like to tell this story. 2 years ago, my hospital was having financial crisis, and they had to not renew my contract, which felt like I was being
Hmm.
fired after being there for 20 years as a
Yeah.
doctor, kind of an esteemed doctor in a lot of ways. So we love you, we love what you do, but sorry, we
Yeah.
can't afford you. And my back started to hurt.
Yep.
And I kept trying to ignore it or tell it it's okay or tell my brain, go on. I keep living my life, but the pain didn't go away for a week and then 2 weeks. And then finally I realized, I wonder what the emotions are that I'm not addressing.
Yep.
And I came to that anger. And the anger, I had to acknowledge it. I had to feel it. I had to express it. So I was riding in my car and I started screaming and yelling. I was all
Yeah.
alone, so didn't matter who I was swearing, but I
Yep.
was swearing at the top of my lungs and screaming and yelling. Then I took the anger to the highest level. I just imagined
Mhm.
blowing up the hospital with, like, TNT, like in a cartoon,
Yeah.
you press the plunger and
Right. Right. Right.
and then I could let the anger go. I'd let it
Right.
up, I'd let it out in a safe and healthy way, and I could let it go. And then I moved
Mm.
to that hurt and the sadness for getting kicked and pushed aside. And I had to turn that hurt into compassion. And
Right.
I
The
ended up
exposure.
forgiving the hospital because they were having problems and they put up with me for
Mm.
20 years and I never made any friggin' money for them because talking to people doesn't make money apparently, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so And then my back pain just completely disappeared
Right.
as I allowed the emotions, the anger to come up, to come out, and to let go. I allowed the sadness to rise up and feel the sadness instead of pushing it down, and
Right.
turn the sadness into compassion and forgiveness. I mean, what an amazing process. And that only took like half an hour, you know. It's
Right.
amazing.
And being aware of it. What I like about, let's say, for me, I haven't had a cold or a flu in 4 years. Before that, it was, flu season, cold season, and it would linger, and I was constantly sick. But then,
Interesting.
I, I would never get sick. I was like, this is great. But the thing is, if I get a sniffle or anything, for me, I don't think of it as a bad thing or a good thing. I
Hmm.
think it's for me, I actually like it because the brain is telling me where I'm at, right?
Mm.
It's always telling you, you know what? It's just you've been a little bit overworking. You've been, you yelled at your mom last week. Maybe you got to pull back on this one friend. It's a little bit toxic. I think it's an indicator where you're at, and it's helping you to make those changes as you go along in life because life throws you curveballs, right? And we can get stuck in certain routines. And if I'm dealing with a certain pain or a sniffle or whatever, I can go, you know what? Maybe I should, yeah, I have been, that was hard. That week was okay. Feel the feelings, cut certain people out, make changes, adjust, and then we're back to normal. It doesn't turn chronic, right? But it's a
Right.
little indicator. Hey, wake up. Look, pay attention to this right over here. And I think that's a good thing.
We are meaning making machines, you know. Our brains
Yeah.
are working to try to understand ourselves and our environment, and we're trying to find meaning in it. You know, it's hard to know exactly, you know, if that sniffle means something about that relationship or something about work or something else. You don't know. You can't know
Yeah.
for sure. But, you know, you can do our best job to think and to be wise and to not overinterpret a symptom and not over, you know, worry about it. Um, yeah, but also figure out, you know, maybe there is some message here. You know, it's funny. I haven't told this story in a while, but when I was almost 3 years old, I was the firstborn, and I was like the prince. You know, I was like the prince of the family. You know, firstborn
Hmm.
male, all that. Anyway, my sister was born, and they brought her home from the hospital, and I started stuttering.
Mm,
And guess what? I wasn't too happy with this change of events.
right.
But it was, you know, I didn't throw temper tantrums because that would be being a bad boy, and I was always a good boy, but I started
Yeah.
stuttering. So I turned that anger inward rather than outward.
Right.
And
Yeah.
my mother, to her great credit, she didn't take me to the hospital. She didn't take me to a speech therapist. She didn't say, "Oh, you've got a problem, Howard. There's something wrong with you."
Right.
She realized that when I didn't stutter when I sang.
Right.
So we sang.
Right.
And she gave me the attention that I needed because I needed the attention. That's what was the problem. Her attention was being taken away from me to this, you know, other person. So she gave me the attention. She sang with me. I didn't stutter, and then my brain kind of, you know, passed
Correct. Yeah.
passed
Corrected
through
it.
that stage. You know, so
Yeah. My friend is.
you know,
I have a
it was a
friend who has a
beautiful
speech
story.
impediment, and you can see. I'm like, well,
Mhm.
do you remember an event? Blah 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 blah. And he said, yeah, I witnessed my dad. He was it was something traumatic, right?
Mm,
And then he
wow.
noticed that's
Yeah.
when the speech impediment started. So it's interesting how that
Yeah.
manifests.
Yeah. There's so many symptoms of mind body conditions. I mean,
Mm,
there's like hundreds.
yeah.
And I mean, it can present as like a stutter, it can present as a cough, it can present as frequent urination, it can
Yep.
present as a burning or tingling sensation. You know, it can present as ringing in the ear. It
Mm,
can present as a dizzy or lightheaded sensation or an off-kilter sensation. You know, it can present as constipation or diarrhea. It
yep.
can present as heartburn. I mean, it can present as chest pain or, you know, so many things. And, you know, like the fatigue can be overwhelming, like you just can't get out of bed. And you can't possibly imagine that
Yep.
fatigue that's so disabling that you can't get out of bed could possibly not be a damage in the body. Is that possible? And yet we see that every single day.
Right. Yeah. Especially now, past 10 years, it's increased, especially after COVID,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Like I would
Yeah,
say out of every three people, two people are dealing with something, right?
talk about fear, a generalized fear in the society, and fear for good reason. People were dying.
Yeah.
It turns out the COVID virus is much less lethal now than it was then. We now have
Yeah.
vaccines for it, so there's much less death due to COVID. But the fear around COVID, and on top of it, the fear around the vaccines was so
Mm.
intense that that was enough to trigger people's brains to create pain, anxiety, fatigue, all these wide variety of symptoms. Brain fog is another common one where you can't even think straight. It
I've
can be
seen that
completely due to the brain. Yeah.
when people, like my dad or my mom, you can see when people are fearing it, they usually see the symptoms after. The people that are indifferent,
Hmm.
right, and are what I call somewhat regulated, like my dad, he can do
Yeah.
anything. He can no problem. Doesn't affect them. They don't even feel nothing, nothing,
Mhm.
right? So it's definitely, a mind thing.
And it's human. It's just being human. The people who have this are not necessarily like damaged or broken or weak or deficient or
Hmm.
crazy. They're just human. We
Yeah.
all have the brain and we all have a body, and it all works in ways to alarm us, to threat, to protect us. And that's the bottom line. And so everybody gets, mind body symptoms of some kind, some
Oh yeah.
points in their life. Um, but the amount of stress in people's life plus the amount of fear or worry about the symptoms can make all the difference in terms of them becoming chronic or just going away.
Yep. Have you noticed that after getting to this space that everywhere you go, you start seeing patterns with people that you love and people in the
Yeah,
streets and an old guy, oh my hip and my I got this, and you're kind of like, do I say something? Do I, you
I
know,
know.
like with family members, I had to stop trying to help them and save them because they weren't interested. So I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna, I
Right.
tried, leave it alone.
Yeah. I mean, that's the pattern. It's true for my family. It's true for everyone's family that I know.
Yeah, yeah,
You can't tell people, you can't change other people's minds about things when they have fixed ideas. You can't change people's politics. You can't change their religion.
yeah,
Those are beliefs. And we can be there with information if people need it, if they want it, or just dropping a little hints here and there to see if they pick up on it. And but we've got tons of resources to help people.
right.
We've got there's all sorts of books. There's a couple of nonprofits. There's one called the ATNS, Association for the Treatment of Neuroplastic Symptoms, which is at symptomatic.me. It's our nonprofit professional organization, but anybody can join,
Hmm.
devoted to educating people about these disorders. There's lists of practitioners. There's also the tmswiki.org, which is a
Right.
peer-run nonprofit dedicated to educating people. My website is unlearnyourpain.com, and it has resources there. There's tons
And
of
you have
books.
books.
There's
Yep.
tons of books. I've written a bunch of books. The ATNS has some great books. A lot of our colleagues have great books. There's videos and movie. There's 3 documentary movies in this space that you can find.
Yeah, that's
Again, at my
important.
website and online. I've got a bunch of like free. I've got a free Coursera course. It's totally free. It's got
Hmm.
17 educational videos on it, tons of information. That's all free. There's some animated videos we've made that are free. So we're really trying to educate people about this if they want to be educated, if they're
Yeah,
interested.
yeah. No, that's good because, when it looks professional, people are most likely to latch on. And when it's represented by doctors and, then people will be like, okay, I'll try this. And that'll bring more success stories. And then there's a proof in this in the pudding and people will start to grow, I think.
Right, right. And if people actually want facts, if they want research studies, we have those too.
That's
If they
huge.
want to read our research studies, our randomized controlled trials using pain reprocessing therapy for back pain and for long COVID, using emotional awareness and expression therapy for fibromyalgia and musculoskeletal
Yep.
pain, we have those studies and the results are remarkable. And again, those are all linked on the ATNS website and my website as well.
Awesome. I have a couple more questions. Have you dealt with any chronic symptoms, you know, going through this when you're, did you have a perfect storm or anything like that where you had like
Myself.
five?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm human, remember?
That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. One of the big ones that I had was neck pain in my
Yeah,
30s and 40s. I was I was a doctor. I was trying to be successful. I was in academia. I was trying to run programs and do research and write and teach and see
yeah,
patients. And I had small children and
yeah.
wife and a family and parents and siblings and just a lot going on. And I would wake up in the morning with my neck in a spasm. And I always
Oh,
thought I slept wrong. And how many people to say that? "Oh, I must have slept wrong." You don't sleep wrong.
right.
You don't injure your neck sleeping. It's just it's not possible, but that's what people think. Well,
Yeah.
okay, fine. That's what I thought. And then I got X-rays, and then they said I had arthritis and bulging discs, and I got PT and traction, and it would go away, and then it would come back again, and would go away, and come back again. It went on for years, and then I, my blood pressure started getting high, and then I started
Mm-hmm.
learning and teaching mindfulness meditation. And mindfulness meditation helped me to put my stress in better perspective, calm my
Mm-hmm.
brain, and my blood pressure went down. I don't
That's
have neck
amazing.
pain anymore. So,
Yeah. Do you
you
do this?
know,
You still do that practice, meditation?
mindfulness, I do to some degree. I'm not a dedicated mindfulness
Yeah.
practitioner, to be honest, but I practice it all the time, because you can practice
Mm.
mindfulness on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
of
Right.
of observing, acknowledging, and interpreting life's events in ways that are hopefully wise and kind, and 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 kind of through the lens of this too shall pass.
Right. Did you deal with any backlash or resistance in the field of medicine because of the mind body approach? Did you have any resistance to that? Did people go, "Oh, that's woo woo. Come on, show us."
Well, I want to make a joke and say no, but
Yeah.
it's it, we this model gets basically attacked and disregarded and dismissed from everywhere.
Yeah.
It's dismissed by traditional medicine, who say no, these symptoms are in the body. You're making, you're not validating people. It's dismissed by alternative medicine folks, who say no, you're missing these other diagnoses. It gets dismissed as being woo woo and new
Yeah.
age, when it's really based on hard science. It gets dismissed by patients themselves, who feel that we're
Hmm.
saying we're invalidating them and their symptoms aren't real, they're all in their head, when we're not saying that at all. But it gets dismissed and attacked. It's just everywhere. It's hard
Yep.
hard to pick up on it. It's hard for medicine to change, and the change it's happen. It's going to happen, I believe, because this model is good, and it's right, and it's true, and
Yeah.
it's a good idea. Now, there's Victor Hugo and others said it. Nothing's more powerful than a good idea whose time has come. This is a
Mm.
good idea. Whether
Yeah.
its time has come or not, I don't know, but we're working on it, and we're
Well,
making progress.
I think that's our job, right? This is
Absolutely.
this is our purpose. It's going to be hard, but that's why
Yeah,
we're here. I
yeah.
think that's
And
amazing.
the change is not going to come from within medicine. Medicine is too entrenched. There's too much.
Yeah.
Uh, the knowledge, this. It's hard to pick up on this because it's counterintuitive. It's going to come from the
Yep.
people who are suffering. The people like you who
Exactly.
suffered greatly and who needed another path and who finally found one. It's going to come, and I get emails, and we all get emails from literally millions and millions of people who are suffering from these chronic disorders that were thought to be incurable, but yet when you analyze them closely, they're not. They're actually mind, body, or neuroplastic disorders that are
Mhm.
reversible, and that's the hope that we're really trying to bring to those sufferers.
So, what advice would you give somebody who's just, they're dealing with something and this video popped in their feed, they're watching it. How would you, what advice would you give them to start?
Educate yourself. Go
Right.
to the websites that we talked about. Take a look, see if it fits for you. There was a young woman who had severe chronic pain since she was 9 years old. Then
Mhm.
when she was in her early 20s, she developed severe fatigue, and that went on for 14 years. So she's having chronic pain, chronic fatigue, can't get out of bed, can't do anything. She got a an ad in her inbox for the Curable app. Curable app
Yep.
is in our space, and she said she kept getting ads for it, and she said, "This is ridiculous. These people are wrong. They're insensitive. They're ignorant. They're
Mhm.
degrading. I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna sign up for that program to prove that it won't work." But in but in the process of signing up for the program, she was exposed to these ideas, and she started
Mhm.
looking at them with a little bit of an open mind. Why does the fatigue better one day and worse the next day? Why did so and so recover and other people
Mhm.
haven't? Why? What's going on? And it turned out when you look closely at these ideas, they will fit your experience. And when it fit her experience, and she got completely better, no pain, no fatigue after, you know, 30, 35 years,
Yeah, it's amazing.
25 years of that or more. And so educate yourself, go to these websites, read the books, see what you think, see if it applies to you. If it doesn't apply to you, fine, you don't have to use it.
Mhm.
But I think if you keep an open mind and look closely, most people will see, because most people with chronic pain do not have a structural problem in the body. Most people with chronic fatigue do not have a structural problem in the body. Most people with chronic anxiety, depression, PTSD do not have a structural problem in their body. Their brain is not actually damaged. Their body's not actually damaged.
Yeah.
That is the message that, and we've shown that. We just published a study with chronic back pain showing that 88% of the people with chronic back pain had no structural damage in their body. That is a revolutionary study, a revolutionary idea. Because if you have chronic neck or back pain and you go to a doctor of any kind,
Yep.
chiropractor, PT, physician, etc., you're going to be told there's something wrong with your back, and they will be wrong the vast majority of the time. That's
Yep.
a revolution.
That's amazing. I'd like to thank you for being on my show. This was really good. I think a lot of people benefit from this interview. We're going to put all your links at the bottom description so people can, get a hold of the programs and the websites, and also a book that you're going to release within a year, I think.
Yeah, I'm writing a new book for Penguin Random House. I'm super excited about it. I'm asking people to add their name to those to be counted. If you've been helped by this work and you want to put your name into our book, there's a website. Through my website, there's a link, and you can. I'll give you that link as well. People can stand
Awesome.
up and be counted, put their name, and they don't have to use their real name, whatever name they want,
Right.
to stand up and be counted. Say, "I was helped," because we're building a movement, and the movement occurs when more and more people see it and benefit from it and want to help others. And that's what you've done. You've seen it, you've
Mhm.
benefited from it, and you want to help others. And that's beautiful.
Awesome.
So
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Bye now.